Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now live. To say it that I am excited would be the understatement of the year because today, on a conversation with Floyd Marshall Jr., and I'm your humble host, Floyd Marshall Jr., I am joined by none other than Shannan E. Johnson, CEO and founder of the Professional Pen. Ladies and gentlemen, she is a script consultant extraordinaire. She is a former executive of the Syfy channel. I am a huge science fiction fan. So when I was reading her bio, I said, okay, yeah, see, we gonna really get into the deep end with this. But again, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not following Shannan E. Johnson on YouTube, I suggest that before this podcast is over, you need to follow her on YouTube. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show, but
Mhm.
you also need to follow her on Instagram because when you talk about someone consistently and constantly dropping gems and dropping knowledge about what it takes to be a real screenwriter and a phenomenal screenwriter that gets work, she is your go to. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Shannan E. Johnson from the Professional Pen, welcome to a conversation with. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, I have been following you for quite some time. I watch your channel, and I first ran across you through Film Courage, and I just sat there with my mouth open because I was sitting there saying, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe the wealth of knowledge that is coming out of this woman's mouth." And here's the most important thing: I could understand it. You
Yes.
made it very relatable,
Yes.
which was absolutely amazing.
That is
So,
my intention. So I love when people tell me that that's the thing that stood out to them because I think in our industry, first of all, just because you're in the industry and you're an expert at something doesn't make you a teacher,
mhm.
right? So a lot of the times when people are speaking, they're speaking over our heads. They're not doing it intentionally, right? They're just speaking about what they understand. But if you want somebody else to be able to take that information and then do something with it, then you have to make sure that you're relaying the information in a relatable way. So it's definitely something I try to do. I'm doing it intentionally. So I love to hear when it's actually happening.
Well, you're not trying, you are doing it, and you are doing it in a phenomenal way. So, something that I always like to ask all of my guests: how did you get started in the film industry?
Oh, wow. Um, I got started in the film industry by quitting my job and putting everything in my car and driving to Los Angeles and lying about being a student so that I could get internships. And so I interned at the Dr. Phil show, at in ABC casting with Mia Levinson casting. And then I started getting like PA jobs, right? Because that's always going to be your next step. I ended up being a director's assistant on The Dog Problem to Scott Kahn's son, actually. And of course, I grew up loving his film. So it was really great to work with him. And then I left and went to film school. So I kind of did it backwards, right? I didn't know much about Hollywood. So I wanted to kind of get my foot in a little bit before I went to film school so I can make sure that I was actually going to school for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Because I was kind of taking the leap. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about this industry. So I went out to LA and just kind of started out there before going to film school. And going to film school, I went wanting to be a writer and I came out wanting to be an executive. And so that's how I ended up applying for the NBC Entertainment Associates program, which was kind of like a fellowship program that we hear about for writers and directors all the time, but it was for executives. And it actually put you in the executive position, which I was not aware of, right? I thought that I was just getting into like a program that was going to teach me about it. I didn't realize it was an actual job. And so it was an actual job. And that's where I dove headfirst into learning what it is to be a development executive and learning what it is to be a current programming executive at the Syfy channel.
Wow. So I had a list of questions, but I was listening to you when you described when you went to do the executive position and how that kind of threw you. But
Mhm.
one thing really stood out. So I'm going to veer off a little bit.
Yes, go ahead.
You talked about someone telling you be seen but not heard.
Yes.
That really struck me. So can you talk about what that was like, and how that made you feel, and if there was any impact to how you did things when you were at that
Yeah.
particular
Oh,
job.
it was definitely impactful. As you can see, I have a big personality. I have always been an overachiever, and therefore I have always achieved at the top, right? I've always been a leader. And so I've always had a lot of initiative. So it's always been my thing to get into the room, figure out what's going on, and then go full speed. Now, I was already at a disadvantage here because, like I said before, I didn't realize it was a job. I thought it was a program. So I
Mhm.
came in thinking people were going to teach me, not that I was supposed to be executing. I just did not know that. I did not have that information. And that was actually one of the critiques that I gave to HR on my way out. Like, it's a great program, but it's not a program. Right. It's a job, and it should be marketed that way so that you get people who are prepared for it. Now, because I am who I am, I eventually learned it, but I literally was figuring it out kind of myself, right? Because there was nobody's job in there to be teaching me either, So for me to then meet with my executive vice president at that time, and something I learned later was that he had had a bad experience with someone in my position before, and so he was projecting. But I didn't
Mhm.
know that. All I knew was in this moment, here I am, me being me, and I'm being told to be seen and not heard, which said to me, don't learn, because I don't know how I'm supposed to learn if I can't do, if I can't ask questions, if I can't say something wrong, if I can't fully participate, then how am I really going to learn? So that really threw me because my confidence was already in a terrible place, right? Because I was already feeling like this isn't what I signed up for, and people are having an expectation of me that I cannot meet. And that's the worst thing you can do to someone who's an overachiever.
Mhm.
Put out an expectation that they can't meet. So I'm already, kind of scrambling on, well, how, what, when, where. I knew nothing. Even coming out of film school, we don't teach the business side. We definitely don't teach the business side of television, right? I hadn't even heard of a development executive, and I had just finished film school. I never even heard of a current executive. So I didn't know what they did. So for me to be in this position of having to fully execute on my role and responsibilities, but not really understanding what that was already a complicated thing for me. It would be for anybody, but for my personality type, it was like double for me. And then for him to say, be seen, not heard, was just kind of soul crushing. Like, I didn't take it at that time in the year 2000, tell the truth about what year it was, 8. I didn't take it as because you're a woman, because you're Black. That's not what I took it as. Maybe that's what he meant. But for there to be other women in there being seen and being heard, I was like, okay, it has nothing to do with me being a woman, right? Because there are other women in here who are
Mhm.
doing things. And then I didn't necessarily feel like it was because I was Black, because it was just a decently open and diverse place. There weren't a whole lot of Black people, but there were a whole lot of all kinds of people, right? So I didn't look at it like that. But I was confused because I didn't understand why I was being told this. You know what I'm saying? And so I listened to it because, again, not knowing anything about the business, I didn't know if, like, maybe that's what it is for people in my position. And he's actually just informing me so I don't go in here and put my foot in my mouth and get in
Mm.
trouble along the way. You know what I mean? So I said, also, I didn't have a lot to say because I was trying to figure it out. So for the most part, it was okay. Eventually, what kind of worked out for me was, because I didn't say much, because I'm just not a person, even though I'm very talkative, I'm not the kind of person who has to talk to just be heard. If I don't have anything to say, I'm not going to say anything. I don't feel like I need to insert myself. And because this industry has coveted positions like that of the executive, many people get into that title, and they are anxious about keeping their job
Mhm.
and proving that they deserve to be there and proving that they have something to bring to the table. I never felt that way. And so, since I didn't feel that way, I didn't feel the need to always insert myself. So therefore, when I did speak, people listened. Right. And when I did, have an assignment that I fully understood, especially the reason I got this job is because of what I do now. I have always been good with story.
Mhm.
Right. So when it came to giving notes, et cetera, I was always good at that, period. Um, Back when I worked there, though, notes only came from one source and nobody knew who gave what note. So
Mm.
people didn't know that's my note. that they just gave you, right? People just didn't know that. That's just not how it worked. So that was something I had to get used to, because I kept thinking, well, how is my supervisor going to know that I'm doing this well if he never knows what I'm giving? But that still didn't make me say, well, I need to be the one that's in there and raising my hand. You have to see me and see me. It's like, no, I'm just going to be. And me being me is going to have to be enough. So eventually I was able to get past that, because I ended up working with a newer executive who had never been an executive before either. Had been in the industry a very, very long time. So he got the job for a reason, but he had never been on the corporate side. And so being on the corporate side was different for him, because he's used to just kind of, as an independent producer, you're just kind of out here doing things the way you want to do them. When you come in the corporate side, there's a different way to do it. And so he leaned on me a lot, because he didn't want to deal with the corporate parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
So he would go, no, Shannan, you take that call alone. Yeah. Okay. No, Shannan, you go over to the set. I'm not going over there. Okay. So I finally got to start like putting boots on the ground and having my own voice, only because somebody who didn't want to do that part of his job came in. And I'm forever thankful, because that's when I started to learn the most. And he didn't come in until after, I think I had been there for at least 6 to 9 months before he got there. So it doesn't mean I wasn't doing things, but I wasn't able to kind of take hold of them. You know what I'm saying? By the time he got there, it was like, nope, you do it. You say it. You call them. You do this. You do that. I was like, thank you, because that's where I'm going to learn. That's how I'm going to learn the most. So it was definitely a punch to the gut. Definitely. But no matter what, as an overachiever, I had a job to do. So I was going to figure it out.
Interesting. There's a gentleman that I follow by the name of Ed Milet.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his favorite lines is, things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm sitting here listening to you talking, and you're navigating the gentleman saying, be seen and not heard, and you just hunker down and do your job. And then the next executive comes in and allows you to flourish, because they don't want to do the job.
Do the job.
And you end up learning even more, because sometimes it's better to move in silence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about screenwriting.
Okay.
So what is the first thing, and this is something that I oh my gosh, what is the first thing a writer should do before starting the script process?
Learn structure. And writers hate that. They hate it. I was talking about this to someone the other day, and they said, oh, well, structure doesn't matter. And I'm not saying that it doesn't, or it does. What I am saying is, if this is what you want to do professionally, and you want to be able to do it over and over and over again, it's not about having a great idea. It's not about having a great concept. It's about actually being able to execute it over and over and over again. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
If this is how you want to make your money. And the best way to be able to execute it over and over again is to understand the formula. And people don't look at writing as if it has a formula. And I don't say that to say that you have to write in a way that is formulaic, right? But it's about understanding what the formula is and playing around with it as much as you like, but you understand it, right? You understand the function of the elements in the story. And a lot of writers aren't even thinking that there are elements in the first place, because when you're a storyteller, you just have ideas and you just have stories. You're not thinking about how it breaks down into blocks of elements that push the story forward. You just aren't thinking about it like that, right? If you learn to think about it like that, then you'll also learn to know what's missing when it's not there, because you know what the blocks are, right? And so a lot of the times when you don't know that and you just go straight to the page and you start to write, when you start to then get feedback from people, especially again, if you're in the industry. If you're not in the industry, who knows what kind of feedback you're getting in the first place, right? But if you're in the industry, you're trying to sell, you're working with a manager, you're working with an agent, you're working with a producer, you're working with executives, whatever, you're sending it to script consultants, whatever, and you start to get the feedback, you're not going to understand how to solve the problem, because you didn't understand what building block was missing in the first place. Right? So you get that feedback, and what you hear is, I'm a bad writer, I should start over from the beginning. And that might not have been what the note was telling you. So notes are already hard enough to decipher. But as the writer, you can safeguard yourself against that by understanding story elements what functions they play, what roles they play, so that when you get your notes back, you can start to say, oh, that note is connected to this function that's not happening, or that note is connected to this function that's weak, right? But that starts with understanding structure. The other reason structure is important is because not all stories are structured the same way, right?
Mm.
So features are structured differently from half-hour multi-camera shows, which are structured differently from 1 hour shows. They have different structures. If you don't know that, you're going to be trying to fit your feature into 60 minutes thinking, oh, all I have to do is just take some stuff out and have 60 pages. No, because the structure is different. Just because it's 60 pages doesn't mean it's a TV show. Just because it's 90 pages doesn't mean it's a feature.
Mm.
Just because it's 15 pages doesn't mean it's a short. All of them have structure. And if you understand the story structure, then you understand what you're trying to, what goals you're trying to reach, about when you should be reaching them, so that the full arc is there in the story. And so if you don't know structure, then you're kind of just flying around. Some people are so good at the natural ability to do it that they're doing that every time anyway, but they can't talk to you about it, right? They can't tell you what they're doing. They're just doing it. And that's great too. If it works for you, it works for you. But again, if you want to be able to be in this industry, and most screenwriters, most working screenwriters, like consistently working screenwriters, are the people whose names you don't know, because what they do is they get hired to write. So they're not writing their own ideas.
Mm.
So the way that they're paying their bills is there are producers out there who have ideas and they need to hire writers to execute it. And the reason that they hire the writers that they hire is because those writers know structure, because then they can write anybody's story, not just their own. So that's kind of what I am as a screenwriter. It's why people put me on their writing staffs. It's why people they hire me to write their screenplay, because they know they're going to get a good foundation. It doesn't mean that there's not another screenwriter out there who's better at dialogue, better at characters, better at building worlds, better at whatever those other things are. Sure. But I'm going to give you the foundation so that the story is very clear, because that's what I do, right? So for me, it's always going to be structure. Take the time to learn it. And that means you have to be patient. Like writers, people who are not writers but want to be writers, wake up a baby, an infant, and try to walk and run and ride bicycles on the same day.
Mm.
Right? And it's like you have to give yourself the time to learn the craft.
Wow. So they learn structure, if they bother to learn
If they
structure.
bother, yes.
What then makes a great story?
You know, it's so subjective that I don't think that there's a recipe for greatness.
Mm.
Like we can look at the Oscar nominees this year, and I'm sure there's going to be somebody going, that movie was stupid. It was still Oscar nominated. You know what I mean? The same thing is true when people are buying ideas. I know an idea right now that obviously I'm not going to talk about, but it's getting made. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible script, and it's getting made. Somebody out there must think it's not terrible.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? The actors are signing up. So what does it matter? You know what I'm saying? So it's not about it being great. It's about, is this a concept that people want to watch? Is it a concept that people want to buy? Are you executing it in a way that it makes sense enough for those particular buyers and that particular audience? Because what one audience expects, another one doesn't. You know what I mean? There are levels. You can write something that is baseline and not that great, or you can write something that's artsy fartsy and way over to the right. You know what I mean? There's just such a a vast difference between them. So I don't necessarily think one thing makes one great versus the other. It's just
Mhm.
about, are you getting it to the people who think it's great? You got to find those people, because if so, then you got it. And if not, then it's just going to sit, on your computer and not go anywhere.
Yeah, and you know what? Because sometimes when I'm watching movies, I'm saying to myself, "How?
How did this get here? Yes.
How did they get this thing on the screen?" I'm saying
Yeah.
to myself, "Who in the world? What? What?" But someone greenlit it.
What someone
Someone
someone thought it
greenlit
was
it.
gonna work. And to that point, just because they greenlit it doesn't mean that they thought it was great.
Mm.
There's so many factors. It being a decent script is just one of them. You know what I mean? That's just one of them. And I say decent, but again, that's subjective. Some people will go, oh, it's decent enough, let's do it. And some people will go, oh, no, it's terrible, let's not. And then some people will read that same script and go, this is the best thing I've ever read. Because people are different. So subjectively, they're going to receive it differently. And the
Hmm.
reason that it gets done could be a million different things that have nothing to do with the script.
So why do you think so many writers, when they're starting out, why do so many, and some veterans and mid-level writers, why do so many writers get story wrong? Where do they go wrong?
Yeah. I think I'm always going to say they go wrong because they don't know structure. Right? Like that's where they went wrong. They went wrong because they thought their idea was a story, and it's not. It's an idea, which means to me, the difference is an idea can be one of those elements we've been talking about. It can be one of those building blocks. You got a great character, you got a great world, you've got great moments, but that's not story. Story is a person or thing, right? Depending upon what it is, trying to accomplish something, trying to solve a problem, and we're watching them try to do it. And it's not going to go that well because if it does, then it's not a movie. So there have to be complications. That's what a story is. Just because you have a character who's doing stuff doesn't mean they are intentionally trying to do something.
Mm.
Right? And so a lot of people go wrong with story is because they don't have one. I have read scripts, 90 pages, and I will start my comment section off with, here's the hard part. This is not a story. After having read 90 pages. And from that, I will then say, this is what I think you're trying to do. This is what I think you're wanting your story to be. That way they can hear it and go, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. Or, okay, she at least understands what I'm trying to do. And then I go from there. Okay, these are the things you need to make that happen, because right now you don't have a story. Right now you have a world. Right now you have a character. Right now you have some people hanging out, talking, hanging around, doing stuff, but none of them are trying to accomplish anything. So we're not tracking anything. We're just watching people hang out for 90 pages. Not a story.
Wow. So someone just put in the comments, Ken Gregory, he follows you. He said,
Hey, Ken.
outline, outline, outline.
Yes.
Shannon has taught me so much. So I'm going to ask that question. It's not
Yeah.
on. Let's talk about outline
Yes.
and why it is so important for script writers or screenwriters to
Mhm.
actually outline, as Mr. Gregory said.
Yeah. So several reasons. One of them, let's just say you're an independent filmmaker and you never plan to work in Hollywood ever. Cool. Outlines will save you time, because then you will realize you don't have a story in the outline before you went and wrote the screenplay. Right? But that's only if you've taken the time to learn structure in the first place so that you can understand what building blocks are supposed to be there. And in the outline, the point is to truncate what you think your story is and look at the scenes one by one after the next. And you'll see there. Now, I said she was supposed to be doing X, but she's doing everything but that. You can see it before you get to the page, right? You can see that that you said that your character was this kind of person, and everything that they're doing doesn't add up to them being that kind of person. You can see that in the outline. So outlining is going to save you time. You will spend more time in the outline, but then you get to spend less time in the script because you already know the holes, because you realized, oh, this is about saving the girl. And then you got to act 2 and you had no idea how your character was actually going to save the girl. You didn't know. You know that's what they're supposed to do. But how? What are the scenes? Okay, they went here and they looked for her and she wasn't there. Great. What are they going to do next? Oh, but then they go to the next place and then they run into the bad guy. Cool. What happens? Right? So you get to figure out all of those things in the outline so that you don't get stuck on the page, because it's harder to get stuck in the script, right? In the outline, you can copy and paste and move things around and, erase it. It's just one block of text. You can erase it. It's not the end of the world. In the script, you're like, okay, how many pages, how much dialogue, what do I have to move around? It gets a little harder. Now, if you're a person who actually wants to work in Hollywood, outlining is necessary because it's going to be expected of you. If you get on a television writing staff, they're going to expect that you be able to outline that episode. Why? Because not only does the showrunner have to approve it, but the showrunner has to send it to the network and the studio for them to approve it too. You do not start working with networks and studios on your television show and just write the scripts. Why? It's going to waste time because they are going to give you notes. And the note might be, we don't want an episode about this, but you already wrote the script. Had you written an outline, they would have told you then that they don't want an episode about that. And you wouldn't have wasted your time, right? So there's an approval process on the television side where we're going to send them something first. They might call it different names, right? But we're going to send them something first that they can approve before we go to script. So that's going to be expected of you. So you need to be able to flush out your ideas in this other stage, not just in a script, not just dialogue doing the storytelling for you. You have to be able to say, this is what's going to happen in this episode, right? And then on the feature side, especially if you're being hired as a contract writer versus you wrote it yourself and then somebody bought it, because now you're past the outline stage, right? But if you have been hired to write something, then they're going to want to see the outline first, and you're going to want to give them the outline first. Because if you write the entire 120-page feature and then they say we don't like half of it, you're going to be mad. You would rather know before you got there, right? So you want everybody to be on the same page. They're going to want everybody to be on the same page. And I always say this to writers: if you're working with a producer or an executive or whoever, and they don't ask for an outline first, request it, because you are going to be mad if you write that whole script and they're like, yeah, so this kind of went in a different direction. It wasn't really what we were looking for. We really were looking for this. Whoa, I would have loved to have known that before I spent this last month writing these 120 pages. So if you think about how many ways an idea can be executed, if all I did was say to you, hey, I really, really, really want you to write a movie about cars and their relationship to their owners, how many stories can that be? So if you just go, okay, and go write something and bring it back, but they had an entirely different idea of what that was, that whatever it is you wrote could be totally like trashed, and you have to start over. So outlines are going to help everybody be on the same page. So I tell everybody to outline. And I'm one of those people that if I get hired, I'm giving you an outline. I'm not going to write another thing until you approve this outline. I won't. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, because you don't want to be, someone tells you that, and half the way in, I don't like it, and you send it, you cursing under your breath.
Yeah, and I, honestly, that could happen anyway because people can change their minds.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But at least you have the proof of, wait a minute, right? So there have been situations where I have been a consultant for a network or a studio, and they gave their writer one set of things. That writer did that. Things changed for them that had nothing to do with the writer. So when the writer came back, they had to say, I know what we told you last time, but things have changed. And this is what we need now, which made them have to go start over. But those are things that you can't, you know what I mean? You don't have any control over that. If stuff changes, it changes. But at least you were on the same page about what you should be executing, and you're not just guessing and then having to start over, because the frustration sits differently. Yes, I'm going to be frustrated that I have to do this all the way over, but at least it wasn't because of what I wrote. It happened, outside. But if it's just because the two of us, we were the only two people on the team and we just didn't communicate, oh no, that's a different kind of frustration.
Wow. So as a script consultant, what draft do you usually come in on?
Yeah, whichever one you want me to. Whichever one you want me to. For newer writers, well, this is what I always tell people. I don't care how long they've been writing. Write your script, then step away from it for however long you want. A week, a month, whatever. Because when you come back, you will be different. We don't understand how much we change day to day, right? You will be different a week later, a month later, when you decide to reread it. And then you will see some of the things that don't connect, even if you can't put words to it because you don't necessarily know structure just yet, right? But you'll have this feeling of, some of this stuff isn't working, some of this stuff isn't as cool as I thought it was, blah, 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 blah. And that's going to get you to your second draft, no matter what, right? If you just do that, you'll get to a second draft. Once you've gotten to your second draft and you literally don't know what to do next, that's when you come to a script consultant. Or you've gotten, even if it's your first draft, but you know so many things are not in the right place, but you can't put your finger on it. So you need that second pair of eyes, turn in your first draft. You know what I'm saying? For those people who are a little further along in the game, then it's do everything you can until you feel like you've made it. And then turn in that draft. Right? Because that means you've probably already done 4 drafts because you already knew which problems there were. You've solved them, blah, blah, blah. So now you're going to submit it just in case you missed something. So it's just really about where you are in your process. But I really think everybody needs a brain trust. Everybody needs somebody who understands story enough who can help you creatively fix the holes versus somebody reading it just to say they liked it or didn't like it. Like that might be helpful for your ego. Oh, they liked it. Right. But if there are things that are missing or things that are underdeveloped, then you want to be able to hear that from someone who can explain to you why, because it's in the why that you're going to be able to fix the problems in the first place.
Do you think a lot of writers overthink the writing process?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, some of that is the thing that makes us writers is we care about the details. So it's kind of like a personality thing that we probably all have. You know, I don't necessarily fit in this box, but you know, a lot of writers tend to be introverts. You know, there are certain things about writers that you're just gonna find that we can get lost in the details. But again, if you understand structure, you're not gonna get lost in the details because you understand the function and you understand if you've hit the function or not. Right? You're getting stuck in those details because you really don't know what you're trying to accomplish. That's really what's happening. And so you're adding more dialogue or you're adding more action, but are you making it worse or making it better? Do you know what the problem is in the first place, or are you just adding stuff? You know what I'm saying? So, and I think that's different from writing action as in details, right? Because that's not getting lost in details. That's just putting too many details that you don't need in a screenplay, but you don't know that if you're not a screenwriter. Right. So as you're learning, you'll realize, oh, I can be more concise here. I don't have to put that much detail. But that's different from, you know, just kind of getting lost and overwhelmed by all of the stuff that's happening on the page because we want it to be perfect and we want it to be this and we want it to be that. But it's if you know the function of this part of the script that you're in, and then you know the function of how each scene is going to get you to that, then you won't get lost in the details because again, it's a formula and you know what you're supposed to put in there. So if you get to a place while you're in your screenplay and you're lost, you need to go back to your outline, leave that screenplay alone and just go backwards and go try to figure out why you're lost in the sauce.
So what you just said is masterful, but the question that I have with that is, how do you know what you don't know?
You don't.
Because yeah, so is that what you just described? Does that realization or that knowledge come through trial by error, or actually going outside and saying, hey, I know something's going on, I can't figure it out, but I know what it is, but as you said, I cannot articulate it?
Yeah. I still think it's going to be on a case by case basis because remember we talked about there are some people who are natural storytellers.
Mhm.
So they don't know structure, but they're able to write in structure, right? I've met several people who have no idea that's what they're doing. If those people continue to write, then it will also become organic to them when things aren't working because it's just natural for them. Again, they should learn structure so they can have the word, they can articulate it, right? They can, you know, talk to other people about it or even talk to themselves about it. But if it's really natural for them, the more you write, the better you'll get because you understand what's happening. For those of us who it's not natural for and we need to learn, you're only going to be able to learn it when someone else who's speaking your language right can put their eyes on it and you can work with them, which is what we try to provide at the Professional Pen. So it's myself and 2 of my story experts who I trained for 6 months before they were even allowed to touch anybody's screenplays because I care about you guys. Not going to just let anybody read. And then they've both been here for almost 3 years at this point, if not more. I lose count at this point, but they've been here for quite some time. So we look at ourselves, and I saw that you put that on the flyer. We look at ourselves as teachers, right? We're teachers, we're therapists, we're coaches. All of those things make us consultants, because we're not just here to go, this was bad, this was good. We're here to go, this isn't working, this is why, this is what this word means, this is the thing that you're missing, this is what this means, so that you can learn it. It's not that we don't want you to not keep spending your money with us. We want you to actually learn it. You know what I'm saying? So that the next time you send us a script, we can see the progress. Because if you never learn it, you never seek out guidance, and no matter how much you think you aren't a natural storyteller, which is fine, then you're not going to progress. You're just going to keep writing and keep running into the same problem. So I meet people all the time who are like, I can't ever finish a script. Is it because I have too many ideas? No, it's because you don't know no structure. And you don't know what your story is. You have an idea and you start writing, but you didn't take the time out to figure out what the story was. And so then you get lost, and then you get discouraged. And then your brain goes, oh, well, we have another idea. Maybe this one will write easier. No, it won't, because you don't know what you're doing. So it's never going to get there. You got to figure out. And so if you want to do this professionally, or even if you don't, but you actually want to make your own film, whatever it is you're trying to do, then you have to seek out those resources so that you can actually get through it. And for me, the best way is to actually learn the craft and not just look up on, getting one good script. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Wow. There are so many questions I want to ask along that tangent, but I have so many other questions that I want to ask you. So I'm going to say that for the next time you come on the
Okay.
show. Just dropping that out there. Why is genre and writing to a specific audience so important?
Yeah, because you're not writing for yourself. And if you're trying to do this professionally, you're actually trying to make a buck, right? So then you have to consider yourself a business, which is why people say, as a writer, you should pick a lane. It doesn't mean that you can't eventually do all of the things, but you have to brand yourself, right? So, for example, McDonald's started off with burger, a burger, a burger, fries, and a milkshake. That's it. So you're coming over here. There's no lettuce. There's no tomatoes. It's the bun. What is it? Mustard, ketchup, pickles, and possibly onions, depending upon which burger they started off with. That's it. And they're gonna have these awesome skinny fries, right? And they're gonna have this milkshake. That's it. Every time you go to McDonald's, that's what you're gonna get. Eventually, people go, we trust McDonald's. And then McDonald's says, hey, I got this other burger. It's basically the same, but instead of the mustard and the ketchup, we put some Thousand Island and some lettuce. Want to try it? And you trust them, so you go, sure, I'll try that one. And then they have those two burgers for some time, right? So the same thing is true for you. You have to be able to brand yourself, because you have to sell. And I'm not even a person who enjoys sales. You know what I'm saying? But
Right.
because you're not the end all be all, even if you are an independent filmmaker, you got to go out and get your money. You know what I mean? You got to go out and get your actors. So you're selling, you're always selling. So you have to be able to speak in a way that people understand, and people understand genre. And you need to understand your audience, because not everybody watches everything, And so if you can think of this as a business, as much as it is art, then you can understand a little bit more why genre and audience and branding and sticking to one thing and blah, blah, blah matter, because you're trying to build something around this brand that people trust. And then once they trust that brand, then you're able to go, okay, well, I want to try to do this too. All right, well, maybe I'll do a little bit of that as well. For example, if Shonda Rhimes decided to write a feature film today, nobody's going to stop her. Right?
No.
But who knows if this would have been before Grey's Anatomy, before Scandal, before blah, 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 blah. And she was coming into the room and I got a feature, I got a pilot, I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that. Then the people would have been, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is it that you do? Right? And I'm not saying that she hasn't always had some feature films tucked away somewhere.
Mhm.
I'm not saying she hasn't. But what I am saying is, because we now trust her as a brand, she could give us anything and we'd go for it.
Yeah. Because if she wanted to write a feature film about a hamburger, They're going to be like, send me the script.
in the script.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I want to ask you a question because I've been watching some of your reels.
Okay.
Have studios desensitized or dumbed down audiences with a lot of the content that they're releasing now?
You know, it's not that the answer is yes, and it's not that the answer is no. I think our industry is lost in the sauce.
Mm,
And I think some of that, you know, this is the good and the bad of it. Anybody can make anything now. There is so much content. There are so many channels, not just cable, not just streamers, fast channels, AVOD, TVOD, SVOD, blah, 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 that anybody can make anything. And so those larger studios are kind of like grasping for straws and also don't want to take risk. Money isn't what it used to be. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily feel like they are intentionally dumbing down the audience, but I do think that they're not taking risk. And when you take risk, you get smarter content. You know, when you take risk, you get unique content. And when you decide that you're not in a position to take those risks, you kind of get meh, medium, run of the mill, you know what I'm saying? Kind of content.
So, can you explain when and if
Hmm.
a writer should get an agent?
Yeah. You should get an agent when you're literally at the table about to sign your life away,
Mm,
because agents aren't interested unless they're going to get their percentage. And if you're a newcomer, all of those agents already have clients. So they're not necessarily checking for you in the first place, right? So if you're at the table and you don't have an entertainment lawyer, because an entertainment lawyer can handle contracts as well, right? But if you don't have an entertainment lawyer, then you want an agent because it's their job to negotiate on your behalf. You should never be negotiating for yourself,
mhm.
ever. You got to make sure somebody understand this paperwork is reading this paperwork, because you will literally be signing your life away. And then you also, at that time, literally every agent will be finding you anyway, because they'll know. And the inside, we talk about who's buying what, when, how, where. They'll know. The agents will know, and they will come. Same thing like with Risa Tisa. She didn't have to go look for them. They went found her. They know, right? So you want to make sure then you get an agent that you trust, and you won't know the first time because you don't know them, right? Which is why having an entertainment lawyer as well is helpful, because now you have two people who are looking at this paperwork and can make sure that you aren't signing your life away. But then and only then do you need an agent. The biggest thing, that the biggest misconception about having an agent is to believe that you made it and your work is done and they're going to be the ones out here hustling on your behalf, and that is untrue.
Mm.
You will still find the majority of your own work. They're just going to make sure that, well, their job is to make sure that things are on the up and up. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And if they do know about things that are happening and they feel like you're right for it, sure, their job is to also put you in the room. But especially depending upon who you are, you have to know, again, going back to branding, genre, audience, etc. You have to know if they're going to be that many openings for something for someone like you in the first place. You know what I'm saying? You can have a big agent, but let's say I'm an actor, and I only do drama, not thrillers, not soapy over the top stuff, but grounded drama. How many times are they going to be looking for a black girl to do that each year? You know what I'm saying? So your agent is out here, and your agent is going to put you, in that box, because that's, again, the best way for them to sell you. Well, what is it that you do? This is what you do. Cool. When I hear about that, I'm gonna put you up. But it doesn't always happen all the time, and they also might not be hearing about the independent things or the smaller things. So you're gonna always be the one out there marketing yourself, networking, pushing yourself, etc. And your agent is just going to be the one to make sure, okay, when it's time to get to the table, we're going to get this thing done.
Yeah, the gentleman that I listen to a lot, Hilliard Guest, he talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
The fact that, I do a lot of things. I have an agent, but I still get a lot of my own work. And I think that's something that a lot of actors miss, a lot of writers miss. I have an agent. I've arrived. And
Mhm.
even when I was acting, on the independent level, I was still scouring backstage,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I would call my agent. Did you see this? Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
You need to submit me for this.
Yeah.
So that is so true. And I think that goes to what you talked about on I think it was Film Courage, the podcast that I was listening to, and you stressed the importance of learning this from the business aspect,
Yeah.
because most people don't consider themselves, and this is something I tell filmmakers all the time, you are a sole proprietorship.
Absolutely.
And if you're not thinking along those lines, then you may be doing yourself a disservice. But with that,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever run across a writer and you've had the discussion with them that this is a business and their pushback is, well, Shannan, I just want to create. I'm not really interested in the business side of this thing. Have you ever had a conversation with someone where you had to sit them down and say, listen, if this is something that you want to do and make a living at it, it is in your best interest to learn the business of this business?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the pushback usually doesn't come from them needing to know the business, but the
Mhm.
truths about how the business works. Right? So they don't necessarily say, I don't need to know the business. What they say is, can you tell me about the business? And then when I tell them, they get mad.
Mm.
Right? Well, it shouldn't work that way. Okay, but it does. I don't know, take the information and use it how you will. But here's the information. So what happens a lot is people will say, well, there's too much gatekeeping. No one gives us the information. And then we give them the information. They go, oh, it's so negative. Why are you being so discouraging? Do you want the information or not? You can look at the information and find it negative and find it discouraging, or you can look at it and go, now I have the information. I won't be shocked when
Mm.
it goes down like that. And I'll be surprised and happy if it doesn't.
Mm.
And so I deal with that more often. People don't, necessarily go, no, I don't want to know, or, but they do go, well, that's not how it's going to work for me. And I don't believe that. And it shouldn't be that way. And things should be different. And why aren't you making it better? And it's like, hey, it's a system. It's the same way we live in America and we have those same conversations. Why is it this way? Why does it happen that way? Why are we making it better? It's a system. It takes a lot to make it work. It takes a lot to tear it down. And if you're going to live in America, you know that you're going to deal with a couple of things. If you're going to work in Hollywood, you know you're going to deal with a couple of things. You can always choose to make it yourself. And then that's when they get quiet. You can
Mm.
always choose to go get as much money. How much? What do you think? Because then I'm looking at the script that they wrote that has all of these car chases and explosions and blah, blah, blah. Hey, if you can raise $20 million, have at it. If you can't, this is your way. So then you have to just work with the system that you're given. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't want to, then okay, I don't know why you're writing screenplays just for them to sit on your computer. I mean, maybe it's a good pastime for you. Not to say that it can't be. Some people just enjoy writing, but I would think that people who just enjoy writing are journaling. You know, they're not writing screenplays and then going, every now and again I'll come in here and I'll read it myself. We write it because we intend to do something with it. We may not do anything with it. I've got plenty of writing samples that I've never done anything with, but as a screenwriter, I should always be writing anyway. It doesn't mean everything's going to get made. Doesn't mean everything's going to get bought. Doesn't mean I'm going to do something with it, but I'm practicing my craft. That's different from I'm going against the system so much that I'm not going to do anything with this screenplay. I'm just going to write it and leave it on my computer. It's like, oh, well, okay.
Okay, you like Dave Chappelle, you keeping it real. Okay, we get it.
Like, because at the end of the day, I always say it's your screenplay. You can do with
Absolutely.
it what you choose.
Absolutely.
I'm going to answer your questions. You can take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm. Just make sure the check clears.
Clears first. So we're going to get on the phone.
I know that's right. So can you explain the importance of learning how to pitch?
Yeah, it's super important, and this is the most gate-kept part of the industry. And what I want people to understand about the industry is, in my opinion, other people may disagree, it's not gate-kept intentionally, right? People aren't on the inside going, "Don't tell anyone." They're just not telling you. They're going on about their lives. You know what I mean? They're
Mhm.
learning what they need to learn, and then they're going on about their careers. They're doing their jobs every day, and then they're going on about their life. Executives don't owe us getting on camera once a week going, so guys, let me tell you about what happened in my week. and exactly how this person should have pitched, and that's not a part of their job. You know what I'm saying? Their job is to listen to the pitches, choose them, and move on. Right? No one is expecting anybody who works in manufacturing to get on live every day and tell you how it works. So that's the exact same thing that's happening in Hollywood. People are working or they're hustling. They're not thinking about, I got to tell everybody else. Right? As a script consultant, it is my job. That's why I do it. Right? So I say that to say, pitching is one of the skills that's the hardest to get information about. And so for me, the more that you can know about what they're looking for when you pitch, because the misconception, and I guess I can understand why it's a misconception, but the misconception is that you're supposed to go in here and talk about every single detail that you wrote down. And so just like I want people to look at being an artist as a business, I want people to think about pitching as sales, right? And I want people to think about pitching as presentation and pitching as conversation more than I have to give them every single detail. And if you think about it that way, you'll understand how quickly people can get bored by hearing you talk about every single detail. Doesn't mean your story isn't cool. I might have enjoyed the read, but if I've already taken 3 pitch meetings today, see, this is again why you have to think about the business and you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes. They've been sitting and listening to people talk at them all day. They've been on meetings that last an hour, hour and a half, all day. They went to lunch. In LA, we don't even lunch by ourselves. We have lunch meetings. You know what I'm saying? They've been in meetings all day or reading scripts and sending out notes or watching dailies or watching whatever and giving notes on the video. They've been doing that all day. And then they come in here with you and you want to say, and then she went over here and then she went over there and then she went here and then she went there. Yo. Yo. You don't want me to pay attention, even if I want to pay attention. And half of the time, people don't want to pay attention. And then they go, well, why would they get that job if they don't want to pay attention? How many people work at a post office and don't want to be there? How many people work in financing and don't send people's checks out on time? Because people are people. It doesn't mean that they don't enjoy their job, but they're human. And they dread Mondays like everybody else, even though they work in Hollywood. I think people think that because we work in Hollywood, that we're just these happy, cheery people who love our jobs so much and just can't wait to talk to other people about it. And it's like, no, these are jobs. They have a boss they don't like, just like you do. They have quotas they have to hit. You know what I mean? They have all of these other stresses and things, and they're still married with kids and, you know, parents and all these other things. They're people. So yeah, when they get in here to listen to your pitch, sure, they should want to listen to it because that would make them a great employee. But these people are thinking about being able to scroll through TikTok when you leave their office. You know what I'm saying?
No.
The same way the rest of us are. You know?
Like, man, I'm trying to watch this cat video.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you see that one of your friends sent you a video message. You're like, dang, I really want to answer this video message, but that would be unprofessional. So I'm gonna sit through. So they're people. So that means the closer you get to understanding what you should be talking about, then the more likely you can at least get the information out. Doesn't mean that they'll buy it, because again, it's subjective. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't mean it's for them. You might have a great pitch, but it's just not for them. Cool. So learning how to pitch is just, it's necessary.
Yeah, you know, as you were talking, it reminded me when Clubhouse was really the thing, and some people would get on stage, and the moderator would have to say, "Oh, okay, it's time to land a plane," because they would be going like, "Yo, stop circling the runway, get to the point,
Yeah,
and land the plane."
and you know what, Floyd? Most people who think they're ready to pitch are not, because they can't land the plane because they don't have a story. They have an idea, and they can talk you in circles with this idea. They can't land the plane though, because they haven't figured out what the story is.
Wow.
Because if
So
you know your story and you know structure, then you know the parts that make the thing go, and you know what to come in here and say.
right, and when you watch certain films, and it's interesting that we're talking about landing the plane because when you watch certain films, you're like, yo, they really landed that.
Hmm.
You're like, wow, they've really put a period on that. And then you'll watch some films and you're saying, it took you 20 minutes to get to this.
Hmm.
Really? You
Yeah.
could have did that in 5, but it
Yeah.
took you 20.
Especially in series. In series, I can tell when they don't know what they're doing. Speaking of planes, what's the name of that TV show where the plane disappears for 5 years?
Lost.
No, not Lost, and then it comes back. Manifest.
Okay.
When I tell you they don't know what happened to that plane, they don't know. The writers, they don't know. I'm watching the show and going, yeah, y'all don't know what happened. Y'all had a great idea. The plane disappears for 5 years and shows back up. What happened? And how are we going to find out what happened?
Mm.
And I was like 5 episodes in when I said to myself, they don't know what happened to the plane. I decided to keep watching. I got to season 2, and then they started making up rules that contradicted the rules they had in season 1. And I said, they don't know what happened to the plane.
Wow.
But they kept making it. So much so that I think somebody else picked it up and started making some more. And I was just like, but they don't know what happened to the plane. They're just,
And that's the story. What happened to the plane? It's like
yeah.
the movie that I love that I watch over and over again, Event Horizon.
Mm,
You knew what happened to that ship because they told you.
yeah.
And that was just an amazing. So I guess if they had gone and watched that film before they shot the series, they could have come up with a better idea. But hey,
Yeah, maybe.
who
But to your point, you are right. The idea is a plane goes missing for 5 years and comes back. The
Mhm.
story is what happened to the plane and how do we find out? And they hadn't figured that part out. And they were in series, they were writing. And I was like, yeah, nobody knows. Either
So
that or it doesn't have the legs for a series and y'all are just circling the drain because you need to make 12 episodes. But really, this could have been a movie.
so why would they do that? Because now you're talking studio level
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
Why would they do something like that, knowing that every week they don't have a clue as to what's going on? Why would they do that?
Yeah. So I think there could be a lot of things happening. And I don't know this to be true because I don't know these people. So let me just say that out loud. Some of it could be that just because you're the creator of a show doesn't mean you know story. They could have, depending upon who they are, sold it just based on the idea. You know what I mean? Um, and the pilot was decent. And so if they shot the pilot first and that worked out, when they go into series, they are given a particular series order. We're in it now, right? Just because you're an executive doesn't mean you know story. Just because you are an executive who knows story and is giving the notes to the writing staff doesn't mean that they are actually addressing those notes in a way that's solving that problem, right? But we're in it. Something has to go up during that block. We can't have a block of white noise for an hour on Thursdays. It's got to go up there. So my bigger question was, how did we get to season 2 and 3 and 4? That's the part where I'm just like, y'all must have not had anything else to put on TV. I don't understand why you didn't take this out of your block. That part I don't know. So I can only think from a programming stance, either that or it's a Hollywood thing. Somebody knew somebody on some kind of level that was like, oh, well, we got to just keep giving it a try. Because that happens too. That's what I mean by like a lot of stuff gets made and it has nothing to do with the story. Sometimes it's, I just want to be in business with this person. So if this is the way to be in business with this person, then let's just do it. And everybody could be sitting back at NBC going, oh my God, this is terrible. And they're still making it,
Wow.
or there could be some people who are just like, this is so great. And everybody else is going, okay. Like you never know.
Wow. So with that, how do you get executives to see things from the writer's perspective?
Yeah. It's something that I am trying to do. It's something that it is like a goal of mine to bridge that gap between executives and writers. Because if executives understood story more, then I think that, not I think, I know the development process would be sharper. And then also the product would be sharper, because the development executives are the people who are giving the notes, and current executives also give notes to things that are currently on television. Like once you get past the development part and it's sold, it's given to the current people. So you're still getting notes on every episode all the time, right? But if the executive understands notes, understands story, then they can give notes that make it clear what the problem is, and then the writers have the creative space to solve the problem. But it has to, it has to be happening on both sides. The writers have to understand story, and the executives have to understand story, so that they're speaking the same language. Because if I, as an executive, am giving you clear information on what's not working, why it's not working, and you as a writer still can't address it, at least the executive would know it's the writer. Let me get them out and get another person in. But sometimes what happens, and I've seen this with my own eyes, is the executive is the problem. Right? They're giving notes that are nonsensical. They're giving notes that cause more problems. They're giving notes in a place that's not a problem. You know what I mean? But that's because they don't know story, and they're just giving notes because it's their job and they want to be seen as, this is something I have to do. Or they're giving notes subjectively, about what they like and don't like, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it helps the story. Right? And so you just don't know what you're going to get. So for me, FYI, it's not a requirement to know story to be an executive. There is nothing like on your resume, or like no test you have to take, no training you have to go through to be an executive. The assumption is the reason you got to this seat is because of whatever you did as an assistant, as an intern, wherever else was focused on story in some kind of way, or you've been a producer or something. So you've been reading enough scripts for a long enough time to have some kind of feedback. Also, that's only one part of an executive's job. You know what I'm saying? Their job is everything that happens to that script or to that show. So they're doing branding, they're doing marketing, they're doing, helping on casting, they're doing everything. So that's just one small thing. So it's not necessarily, and it's not small, but that's just one of the things that they're doing. A lot of their job is about relationships. A lot of their job is about which writers should we hire, which directors should we hire, which actors should we go out to. So they are bringing a different set of skills. And I just wish that we would lean into the skill of story and structure a little more, because I just think that would help in the conversations of giving notes between the two. Because a lot of the times the writers are just like rolling their eyes when they get their notes, because the executives just don't know what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? And again, some executives do, because they have a natural thing. They won't be using the same language though, because they don't know the language. So they can't tell you you're missing an inciting incident. They can't say that, but they can say something to help you understand you're missing an inciting incident if you know the language and if you know the function. But if you don't know the function and they don't know the function, where does that leave us?
With a conundrum.
With a conundrum.
Yeah. So with that, on notes, should writers learn not to take them personally?
Absolutely. Because they're not personal. At least they shouldn't be. If they are, then you can talk to HR. But they're not personal. They should be about your story. The hard part about not taking it personal is that we get so connected to our stories. You know what I'm saying? That we start to sorry, my light went out, so I was trying to turn it back.
Okay. Lighting's good.
Yeah. Okay, great. That we take it personally because we are so closely connected to the story. So this is again a subjective thing. You have to figure out how to do this for yourself. For me, I already know it's not personal. Therefore, I don't take it personally. Doesn't mean my ego is not going to get punched. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants a note. Nobody wants to be critiqued. Nobody. You know what I'm saying? But I know that they're not critiquing Shannan. They're critiquing the art. They're critiquing the story, which again is always going to lead back to, if you understand story and you understand structure, then your notes will clearly be talking about the story. Versus, I don't like this. Why did you make that decision? This decision doesn't make sense. Well, if you're getting notes like that, then yeah, you might take it a little personally. You know what I'm saying? But your executive, your script consultant, your producer, whoever it is who you're getting notes from is a part of your team, right? They don't win if you don't win. So if you understand that it's not an attack, and a lot of writers hate, dread getting notes because they feel like they're being attacked, instead of looking at it as we're all trying to get this thing done because we all succeed if it gets done. So they're just my second, third pair of eyes. You know what I'm saying? They're just talking to me about stuff I hadn't even thought of, right? Instead of me sitting in my house by myself having to figure it out, I have other people. That's what's also great about being on a writing staff. You don't have to figure out all 20 episodes all by yourself. There's a group of us. We get to figure it out together. So if we can start looking at the, the notes process in that way as well, then it can kind of help you to take the personal, part out of it.
So I was listening to you talking about, and if I get this wrong, please correct me, on the nose dialogue.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. It basically means, this is how I explain it to people. People don't say what they mean or mean what they say. So why do your characters? Right? How often are you in conversation with people and both of you come out of the conversation believing that the conversation went a totally different way? Right? How often are you in a conversation with someone who shuts down and doesn't respond? How often is someone giving you body language instead of words? How often can people not articulate what they're actually trying to say? That's a great way of understanding that your characters should not be emotionally intelligent. Every single one of them knows what they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and saying it to you. Really? That's not, you know. And so on the nose basically means that it's clear as day right here in front of you. And what we're looking for is nuance, subtlety, subtext. And the best way to look at subtext is, how can I say this without saying that? How can I show this without saying that? Right? So I give people an example. If the character walks in the room and says, "I'm so angry," that's on the nose. So then the question would be, how can they say they're angry without saying they're angry? How can they show they're angry without saying they're angry? So if you set it up before that this character really hates Brussels sprouts, right? Way long time ago in a totally different scene. Now, we just saw them come out of a scene that was really negative for them. So we know that they're in a negative emotional place. They walk into this next scene and they see that plate of Brussels sprouts. If they yelled, "Brussels sprouts," I know that equals I am angry. If they don't yell Brussels sprouts, but they take it and chunk it, I know I'm angry, right? And so that doesn't mean that every single line has to have subtext, every single line has to have nuance, because then that's not going to start making sense. Like, I've also read scripts where it's like, you're burying it so far, I don't know what you're talking about, right? We still need the context to be there. But it's just about, this is the fun part. You get to have some wordplay. Instead of people just going, "Do you want to go to lunch?" "Yeah, I want to go to lunch." "Where would you like to go to lunch?" "Yeah, I want lasagna." "Great, I'm into lasagna too." It's like, okay, everybody knows what they want. Everybody's saying it very clearly, and that's not very interesting,
When you were talking about subtext, the person that came to mind was Claire Huxtable,
Mm-hmm.
because she was a master. Felicia Rashad's character was a master of saying a certain thing in a certain tone of voice. And she never raised her voice, but you knew that you were in trouble, and you would be sitting there looking at TV like, "Uh-oh."
Uh-oh. You felt like you were in trouble too.
Yeah, you should like, "Ooh," and I'm looking at my wife like, "Did I do something?" She's like, "No." I'm like, "What? I thought I did something," because she could really convey, like you said, the subtlety. And sometimes it's not about
Yeah.
but you walk into, let's take the Brussels sprouts. I've been married for a very long time. They're going on 36 years. So if my wife doesn't like something and she walks in the kitchen and she sees me doing it, she won't say a word, but she'll give me a look. And then I'll be like, "Excuse my French, ladies and gentlemen. Oh shit.
Yeah.
I just stepped in it."
I just did it. Yeah.
Because I know she didn't like it, but I did it anyway.
Yeah.
So With that, how do you write a scene, a great scene with no dialogue?
Yeah, that's actually an exercise I give writers who have a hard time with on the nose dialogue. I tell them to write it without any dialogue at all. If you understand, I'm going to go back to it, the function of this scene, which again, a lot of people don't think about the function of the scene. They're just thinking this would be cool. Oh yeah, we gotta make them do that. So then they write a scene instead of thinking in my last scene, something happened that took my character to a negative emotional place. How does that affect what happens
Uh-oh.
in this next scene? Uh-oh. Are we frozen?
Uh-oh. We lost her.
I'm still here.
She's
I'm
back.
here.
She was back.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? You're
I
frozen
can.
on my end. Okay,
Okay. Okay. There you go. So you're going to have to repeat that.
that's okay. Let's see. What was I saying? Mm, oh, how to write a scene. Okay. So I usually tell people to write scenes without dialogue so that they can learn that they don't need dialogue, right? So
Mhm.
people who use dialogue to push their scenes or people who have a hard time with on the nose dialogue, I tell them don't put any dialogue in the scene. The way that you write a great scene, whether there's dialogue or not, is to understand the function of the scene. But most people are writing a scene because it seems cool or because, oh, yeah, we got to see them do this. Instead of realizing what is the function of this scene? What is the goal of this scene? And how does this scene get them closer to or farther from wherever it is they're trying to go? Whatever thing they're trying to achieve, whatever problem they're trying to solve. So if I know in the last scene, my character is in an emotionally negative place, then how does that cause this person to act in the next scene? And then what are they trying to accomplish in that scene? Or what are you trying to accomplish as the writer in that scene? That's all that you need to write and nothing else. Right? So if, for example, something negative happened here and it changed her mind and made her believe I shouldn't go after my goal anymore. And the point of the next scene is to change her mind again for the positive, then your job is to figure out what needs to happen in this scene so that she changes positively and redirects into getting the thing done. So that's the function of the scene. You can write that out. And if there has to be I tell people, write it as much as you can. And then if it has to have a line of dialogue for us to be able to follow it contextually or emotionally, then put that in and that only. But one of my first assignments in film school, I think it was on the application, I had to write 2 scripts with no dialogue, which meant that they had to be structured, right? Because there's nothing else to see but this thing or person trying to accomplish something. That's it. There's no words. There's no dialogue. There's no other fun stuff. There's just what are they trying to do? How do they try to do it? And do they do it? Do they reach it?
Mm. Wow. That's the master class right there. But we're almost done because I'm not going to keep you because I could have you here for another 2 hours. Um, this is something that has been discussed by a lot of people in this industry, and I'd love to get your take on it.
Mm-hmm.
Should writers of different ethnicities be writing outside of their race?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say yes, because Black people have been doing that for centuries. Right? Like, think about the times when there weren't very many Black shows on television. It doesn't mean that Black people weren't on the staff. They might have been the only person on the staff, right? But it doesn't mean they weren't there. Same thing for any other kind of person of color. Again, going back to this is America. So that means we're almost always going to be the minority in the room. And when you're on a writing staff, you're writing somebody else's idea, period. No matter what the subject matter is, no matter what the ethnicities are, et cetera, you're writing something, period. The other thing is sometimes the thing that you're bringing to the table is not about race, but it could be subject matter, right? So if it's a show with a white cast living in New York and I'm a Black New Yorker, don't I have something to add?
Mhm.
I might not be able to say what white people do in New York, but I can talk about New York. right? Or let's say I'm talking about friends. So let's say this particular group of white people loves to hang out at a coffee shop, and I'm Latinx, Latinx, and I used to own a coffee shop. Don't I have something to add? Right? Doesn't matter that I'm not white, but I know about coffee, right? So I think the same thing is true across whichever race. What I do believe, which is why I have a social responsibility analysis that we do for all of the development notes that we have come in. What I do believe is that if you're going to solely write about this other race, right? So you're not a part of the group who's giving input to create this larger world, but it's you by yourself writing about people who you are not familiar with, then you need to do the research. I'm still not going to tell you you can't do it, right? Because I think, this was said on a podcast before. Women can write men and black, well, they weren't talking about writing. So I'm adding that part in, right? Women can write men and black people can write white people because the oppressed knows the oppressor better than they do. Right? As black people, we're living in a white world. We can write your world, but you probably can't write mine because you have the privilege of not being in it if you choose not to. I don't have that privilege. I live in two worlds, right? I live in your world, which is America, and then I get to have my safe spaces where it's just me and my people. As a white person or someone who is not black, right? You too live in the white America that we all live in, but then you don't live in the world where black people are. So if you're going to write black people, then you're going to have to come visit us. You know what I'm saying? There are also people who did grow up in our world. That's where they were. That's their friends. That's their blah, 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 blah. So they have a perspective. Doesn't make it the perspective, but they have a perspective. And so as long as they are writing from that perspective, I'm open to it. I think the biggest problem is when we're trying to write about people without doing our fair research. And by research, I mean being with the people, because what you get on the media, what you get from the media or what you get from books is still just stereotypes. You know what I'm saying? It's still just painting one thing, depending upon what book you read, you believe that's what those people are like. That's one book, you know what I mean? And you can't read all the books. So the best thing for you to do is submerge yourself. The same thing is true if I was going to write about medicine. My sister is a surgeon, but I'll probably do better by going to work with her because she's a surgeon, but the way she does things might be different from the way somebody else does things. Or she's a surgeon, not a nurse. And my story is about nurses. So I have to submerge myself into that. So I believe the same thing is true about ethnicities. I think the hard thing is because we live in America and Hollywood is a product of America, we don't get to tell a lot of our own stories simply because people believe people don't want to see them or hear them, right? And the people who are in power, which is why I'm always telling people, the power is in the executive suite. The power is in the executive suite. Even if you have your own production company, you have to go pitch to those executives, right? Those are the people who are then going to give the notes that push it towards stereotypes. Those are the people who don't understand anything about your experience and are going to try to commercialize it, right? Because they don't understand. We need more people of color in those positions so that we don't have to come in here and try to explain. When my mother talks to me, she talks like this. When she answers the phone because she thinks it's a bill collector, she talks like this. I don't have to explain that to people who have parents who do that. You know what I mean? Right? But if I'm talking to someone who gets to just talk how they want to all the time, just be themselves all the time, then they're not going to understand it. So instead, their note is going to be, well, it seems weird. It's inauthentic. Why isn't she speaking how she actually speaks? Because we don't do that.
No.
No, that's not how this works, right? So, to answer your question, I think it's fine. I think it's okay. I have a client who's a white male who has actually written several stories with Black female protagonists, but he submerges himself, around Black women so that he can understand them. And he sends it to me. So when I read it, if I read something that I think is like stereotypical or on the nose, and I'm going to go, hey, see this thing right here? No. we got we have to pull that out, or we have to make sure we understand why we're doing it, because sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes writing a stereotype is intentional, so we need to know what's the function of it, how does it push the story forward, what message are you sending, and do you care that you're sending that message? But if no one's having that conversation, then they don't have to think about it. When you submit your stuff to professional pen, we're going to give you an analysis to let you know, hey, you realize this is the message you're sending out, right? You good with that? How does that push the story forward? It doesn't, then you probably don't need it, you know?
Hmm. So I'm going to ask a question in the audience, and then I have one more question about Miss Tisa.
Okay.
Ken Gregory asked the question: when a show has different directors, what changes in the show, i.e., story, aesthetic, etc., versus having one director like it was back in the day? And is it problematic when
Mhm.
there are different directors?
Yeah. So actually, Ken, television shows have almost always had different directors on every episode. So directors tend to rotate out versus having a feature. Obviously, it's just one thing you're shooting, so there's just one director. So the director who shoots the pilot gets to set the aesthetics. That's what they do. Any other director comes in to live within that. So it's just like being a writer on a writing staff. You're coming in to write in the voice of the creator of the show. You then get to use your creativity and sensibility to help, build the rest of the stuff and write the episodes, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, all of the 10 people on this writing staff, when those episodes get made, they need to be consistent. It doesn't need to sound like Shannon script, Floyd script, Ken script, right? It needs to just sound like The Cosby Show or whatever show it is. So the same thing is true for directors. They're coming in to go, this is the template that's been set for me. This is how they shoot things here. I'm coming in to shoot it the way they shoot it. And because I am a creative being, I'm going to add a little bit of sauce here, a little bit of sauce there, but not enough for the audience members to go, what show am I watching? Like what was that they did. So I would actually say now, because of the amount of limited series there are, and even some of the shows that are not limited series, we are seeing more directors stay throughout the show. Like Taylor Sheridan for Yellowstone has directed a whole lot of those episodes, and so he's able to be very consistent because it's him who's directing. Same thing is true for The Bear. The Bear has a team of showrunners who are also directors. So they run the writer's room and they direct the series. So theirs is going to, stay decently consistent. They do have a writing staff and they do have other directors every now and again, but they're pretty consistent in there. So it's an opportunity for directors to come and learn how to direct TV by being able to have those opportunities to do episodes here, there, everywhere. They can jump from show to show. So it's not like a writing staff where it's like, I'm just on this show right now. That's it. Directors can pop any and everywhere. And they're doing that to create their brand, because shooting multi-camera TV is different from shooting single camera TV. It's different from shooting 1 hour TV, right? So they are able to build that muscle by jumping from show to show to show that does 1 hour TV. Now they're that person that people call when it's time to do the next show. And then hopefully one day they actually get to do the pilot of a show and they get to be the ones who set the aesthetics.
Wow. Phenomenal answer. So I'm going to combine this last question, the last two questions, because you talked about this in your real, I think it was yesterday, regarding the film on Netflix with by Mr. Perry, and Risa Tisa, if I'm pronouncing her name right. And you talked about audience and how are they catering to their audience? Gosh, how did you put that question? Basically, when you were talking about Tyler Perry's Mea Culpa and the dissatisfaction that his fans had with his latest film, and then Risa Tisa being signed by CAA, and with it not really being a story. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, on the Risa Tisa side, I know, right? Different mediums, different structures, different ways to receive story. The reason we watched, for those who made it all the way through, I did not, but the reason that people watched is because it is interesting to sit around and hear somebody spill tea, right? And you got 50 hours or however many hours of somebody spilling tea. Yes, that's interesting. It wasn't interesting to me, but I can understand why it's interesting. The reason it is not a story is because I said earlier, a story is about someone trying to accomplish something or solve a problem. In this particular real life version of this, she's not. She's actively participating. She's just there. She knows he may be lying. She still stays. She's not actively trying to get out. She's not actively trying to find him out. She's not actively trying to take him down. Not to say that she should be, because in real life, that's not how people work, especially women, right? We feel like we got a good thing. We don't want to rock the boat. Not rocking the boat is not something that you're going to watch on television. You're watching it on television because you want to see the boat rocked, not because you just want to see the person keep having something happen to them and happen to them, happen to them and happen to them. You want them to be doing something so it goes this way. So that's one of the reasons why I say her video series is not a story. But if I'm on TikTok, then yes, it's a story. Just like if one of your cousin comes in and says, "Let me tell you what happened last week," they're going to tell you a story, right? But the reason that I compared what could be her story, or looking at her idea as of what it is right now with Mia Copa, is because of the probably overly dramatic, soapy kind of way that it could lead to, because everyone in her comments and the comments of anybody else is saying, "Call Tyler Perry, this could be the next Tyler Perry thing, blah, 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 blah," right? Now, because I'm in the industry and because a lot of people who follow me are people who are interested in writing, that means they have their own ideas. Most people say all the time, "We want better stuff. We want less trauma." And then I look at this and I go, "But she's telling you a story of trauma." You know what I mean? She's telling you a story of how she was hoodwinked and bamboozled for 2 years of her life, including having lost a child, thinking that he lost his grandparents. All of these things are traumatic. You know what I'm saying? But the audience was there and is standing 10 toes down about why this should be a story. So then that made me go to, we already know Tyler Perry is programming to his audience, period. Because if he wasn't, he wouldn't be making any money. You know what I mean? Like, his audience is there, they're loyal, they like his stuff, that's fine. So my question was really just to writers about, we are the ones who say we want something different, but do audiences? If audiences want her story, if audiences show up for Tyler Perry, do they actually want something different? Do they want smarter, more clever, more impactful, more elevated stuff? Or is that just the artsy fartsies, like us who are doing the writing, who want that? You know what I'm saying? And so it was just kind of a challenge to writers to think about it. Not that I'm pushing people well, I am pushing people one way or the other. I prefer more elevated, stuff. But just for you as a writer, going back to looking at this as a business for yourself, what kind of research have you done about your audience, the people you think you're programming to, which is not Black people? That's a monolith, right? Not all Black people watch the same stuff. We don't. We don't watch the same stuff. We don't read the same stuff. We don't watch the same stuff at the same time of day. We don't watch it through the same medium. Some people do with their computers. Some people are on their phones. Some people are on the TV. Some people have cable. Some people have streamers. Some people, you know what I mean? We're all different. So we have different education levels. We have different income levels. We have different parts of the cities we live in. We have different cities that in states we live in, different morals, different thoughts about, what should be and shouldn't be, government, blah, 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 right? So if you think about who your particular audience is, are you writing stuff for them? Is that a large enough audience for you to be successful in this thing? Because that's what the buyers are going to be thinking about, which sucks because the buyers are always going to go the stereotypical way. But again, is it stereotypical if Tyler Perry is making the money he's making and 400 million people watched 50 hours of Risa Tisa? Is it stereotypical or is it real?
I would tend to come down on the side of it's real.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that if you looked at those numbers, studio execs are looking at those numbers and they're
Absolutely.
saying, well, they're saying one thing, but the numbers, and as the old saying goes, the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
So if 400 million people watch 50 hours of her and her trauma, I didn't see it. I was like, what the hell is everyone talking about? I had absolutely no idea. But if 400 million people counting, then they just did the knockoff version on Tubi. It's a movie on Tubi out already about
Somebody
this.
said, and I was like,
Yes.
what? I said, but with her permission?
No, Tubi.
Oh my God.
So you have that, and then you have Tyler, and this is something that I always say about Tyler. You don't have to like his stories,
Mm-mm.
but look at how he does business.
Mhm. You can't hate the business.
I
You
said,
can't.
there's a reason that man has that big studio down in Atlanta, ladies and
Absolutely.
gentlemen. So if you don't like the story, that's cool. But
Mhm.
if you're looking at it solely from a business standpoint, and I put up a post a few weeks ago, I said, tell me that I'm writing to my audience without telling me I'm writing to my audience. And I
Yeah.
put his picture up
Yeah.
because he doesn't care like he did on the Kenya Barris show when he was on Kenya Barris show. When Kenya Barris asked him a question, he said, I don't care because I'm not writing for you.
Mhm.
So the fact that you don't like what I'm writing doesn't bother me because I got a big ass studio down in Atlanta that says somebody likes it.
Yeah.
So I think if more writers got to that stage of the game where once you find your audience and you're
Yeah.
writing to your audience, you can be very successful
Yeah.
with that. But
Yeah.
last question, and this has been absolutely amazing. Well, I have a couple more questions because I have to ask you some other stuff. What advice would you give anyone looking to enter this business as a writer?
Mhm. Same thing I said earlier. Learn structure. Start there. Care about your craft. That's going to be something that sets you apart from other people, but will also make your life frustrating. Because you'll realize it's kind of like being woke. You know, when you're the only woke person in the room, it's a heavy burden to carry, right? Because you're realizing how ignorant everybody else is. If you've gone to therapy and you're the healed one in your family, you're like, yo, everyone is nuts, right? And so the same thing can be true for learning structure because then you start to realize how much structure other people don't know. But I just think because this is a business and because it's a big money making business, we get a whole lot of people who are here for just that part. And so then we lose the part of being an artist and working in your passion and caring about your craft. So for me, it's always craft. Start with craft. And then the second side of that is no matter how great your story is, nobody will care if you don't know anybody. So get out there and network. Get out there and meet people. As Issa Rae said, network across. You might be in your city of whatever city right now, and there are other people there who want to make movies. You write, they direct, a couple other people act, and just go, 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 go. Because at some point, 10 years from now, one of y'all will have made it and they can pull the other person, up. Or all of you have made it, but you're in different areas of the game. You know what I'm saying? Um, if you do, think that you will need an agent or a manager or any of those people soon, get to know their assistants because those are the people who are going to be the next generation of agents and managers, executives, producers, etc. Get to know those assistants. Those are the people who are your friends, right? Because again, they're going to rise up this way, you're going to rise up this way, and now next thing you know, you can make this great team later on in life. So, learn your craft, do it over and over and over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Like get better at it and better at it. Receive feedback so that you can get better at it. Get trusted people so that you can get better at it. And then be out here meeting people and working with people because since there are so many ways to make your own stuff now, it's not about money, it's about getting better at it. So the more you write and then get it produced, even if it's just you and your friends producing it, you'll see that the things that you put in your screenplay really cost this much money and not this much money. You know, you'll start to see the thing that I wrote in my screenplay really takes this many days to shoot, not this many days to shoot. So those are things that you will learn by just getting out there and doing it. It's not about then putting it on YouTube or Tubi or Instagram for everybody to see. That's not what it always is. Same thing with everything that you write. Not everything you write is meant to be sold. Some things are just writing samples for you to get another job, and some things were just practice for you and should never go anywhere. They should just stay where they are. They were just practice. You learned what you learned, and then you moved on.
Wow. So what's next?
Woo, for me, you know, recovering from the strike. The strike hit us all.
Mm.
The strike hit us all. So I am trying to do as many speaking engagements as I can, you know, for exposure. I think that's the best way to market versus, you know, doing ads and stuff, which I would love to be doing, but Facebook has deactivated my ads account. And, you know, Facebook is the hardest place to actually talk to a person. So it's been
Mm.
deactivated for 6 months. I don't know how many months at this point. So I haven't been able to run any ads. So I'm really just out here using social media, using speaking engagements so that people understand that the services are here. So if you are looking for a safe space, we have membership. If you're looking to learn from scratch, we have membership. If you are a little bit above that and you feel like you understand structure, you understand a little bit about the business, and you're in a place where you need to learn how to receive and address notes, and you need to learn how to write on deadline, then we have mentorship, which speeds through. So it's for people who are ready. Okay. And then we have a script development lab that will open up at the end of the year for those people who have a solid writing portfolio and are now just seeking access, so that we go through the process of writing another script, learning how to pitch, right? So we talked about that earlier, learning how to pitch, and then getting an opportunity to actually pitch to some people in the industry so that you can start making connections. So it's really just about, this year is about people knowing that the professional pen exists so that we can keep having people come in. And then obviously our signature service is development notes. So we don't do coverage because coverage is not for screenwriters. I say that every single time. We do development notes because development notes do what? Develop you. So we do page by page, detailed, objective notes that give you a place to start when you go into your revision. So if you are at a place where you've written your screenplay and you are ready to receive feedback, send it on over to us.
So where can people find you?
Yes, theprofessionalpen.com. That's the place you can find me. At The Professional Pen on Instagram. On YouTube, it's my name /Shannan E. Johnson. There are no O's in my first name. Shannan has 2 A's. And then we have Facebook page, which is The Professional Pen. And then I have Twitter, which is Shannan E. Johnson, and TikTok, which is Shannan E. Johnson. But in actuality, Instagram and the website is where you're going to get the most of your resources. Because since I'm kind of a one-woman show on that front, it's hard to keep them all up. Oh, YouTube. I'm doing a little better with YouTube this year. So that's a part of my goals for the year too, is to just try to stay consistent on some other platforms.
Yeah. Yeah, I love your IG page, and the
Thank you.
YouTube is absolutely phenomenal. And I made the decision to really dive into YouTube this year too, because
Yeah.
my web manager keeps saying you need to do more YouTube content. I'm like, all right, all right. So I'm
Yeah.
being very intentional with my YouTube channel, and it's growing. So she was
Yeah.
right. Okay, she was right. Okay, you were right, ladies and gentlemen. The Professional Pen, Shannan E. Johnson. Again, as I said at the beginning of the show, it is a must that you go and follow this dynamic young lady, because if screenwriting and learning the craft and doing it the right way is your end goal, then this is definitely someone that you should be listening to on a daily basis. I listen to her every single day. And that is no exaggeration, because I am all about learning. I'm
Yeah.
not writing, but it's all about learning. And
Mhm.
if you're going to be in this business, and if you're in a room, it's pretty nice to, when you're in conversation, to actually sound like you know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And if you listen to someone like Shannan, I'm going to give her flowers. She's absolutely amazing.
Oh,
If you're listening to someone like this, you're definitely going to learn. I cannot stress this enough. I cannot stress this enough. If you're looking to learn this business, and you're looking to learn it the right way, and if you're looking to learn the crafting of story, please do yourself a favor in 2024, and it's free. It's free. Go follow her on IG. Go subscribe to her channel on YouTube
Yes.
and be head and shoulders above everyone else. Because I'm telling you, when you do that and you really start internalizing what she's saying, you will be head and shoulders above everyone else in this game. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me and the amazing Shannan E. Johnson on a conversation with Floyd Marshall. And if you enjoyed the show, do yourself a favor and share it with your screenwriter friends, your filmmaker friends, your cinematographer friends. We love that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel because I'm going to be bringing you more phenomenal interviews with people such as Shannan. And I would love for you to come back because you were mentioning things and I'm saying, oh, I didn't get to ask her that. I didn't get to ask her that question. So there are so many questions that and I didn't even get to all of the questions.
I'm sure I told you wouldn't.
I didn't, but we got to enough. So I hope this helps people. And ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for joining myself and the amazing Shannan E. Johnson. And I will end it as I always do. Love this like a hobby, but treat it like a business. Everyone have an absolutely amazing, amazing evening. Peace.